18 hours remain. David woke before dawn, gathered the roasted grain, the 10 loaves of bread, and the 10 cheeses his father had prepared. He left the sheep with a servant, slung his shepherd's bag over his shoulder, gripped his staff, and began the 15-mile journey to the valley of Elah. He was simply obeying his father. He had no idea he was walking toward destiny. The sun climbed higher as David walked the road from Bethlehem toward the valley where Israel's army was encamped. It was a beautiful morning, the kind of morning that felt full of possibility. David walked with the easy stride of someone who'd spent his entire life in the hills, someone comfortable with long distances and solitude. His shepherd's staff kept rhythm with his steps. As he walked, he sang quietly, psalms he'd been composing, songs of praise to the God who'd anointed him through Samuel. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. He had no idea how prophetic those words would become in just a few hours. Other travelers were on the road too, merchants heading to the camp to sell supplies, messengers carrying news, farmers bringing food for the army. "Where are you headed, young man?" one merchant asked. "To see my brothers," David replied. "They're with Saul's army." "Ah, well, you'll find them easily enough. Just follow the smell of fear." David frowned. "Fear? You haven't heard? There's a Philistine giant challenging Israel twice a day. Been doing it for over a month. No one dares fight him. The whole army's paralyzed." The merchant moved on, leaving David with a knot of unease in his stomach. A giant? Challenging Israel? Challenging the armies of the living God? David's pace quickened. By mid-morning, he could see the valley ahead, 2 ridges with armies camped on opposite sides, and the valley floor between them. As he approached the Israeli camp, he could hear the morning routines, men sharpening weapons, officers shouting orders, horses being fed. But there was something else in the air, too. Tension, an undercurrent of anxiety. David reached the camp perimeter and was stopped by a guard. "State your business." "I'm David, son of Jesse of Bethlehem. I'm bringing supplies to my brothers, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah, sons of Jesse. They serve in Saul's army." The guard waved him through. "Leave your supplies with the keeper of baggage. Your brothers are probably with their unit on the battle line." David did as instructed, leaving the bread, grain, and cheese with the supply master, then headed toward where the army was assembling. He could see them now, ranks of soldiers lined up on the ridge, facing across the valley toward the Philistine army on the opposite hill. Battle formations, as if preparing to fight. But no one was moving. David found a soldier and asked, "Where can I find the unit from Bethlehem?" "Eliab, son of Jesse." "That way," the soldier pointed. "3rd Battalion left flank." David hurried toward his brother's position, weaving between soldiers, and then he heard it. A voice, deep, thunderous, echoing across the valley. "Why do you come out and line up for battle?" David froze. "Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul?" The voice was like nothing David had ever heard. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, reverberating off the hills. "Choose a man and have him come down to me." David pushed forward until he could see, and there, in the valley below, stood Goliath. Even from this distance, the giant's size was shocking. He towered over the landscape, his bronze armor blazing in the midday sun like a beacon. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. Goliath's laughter rolled across the valley. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. David watched, stunned, as something shameful happened. The Israeli soldiers, grown men, trained warriors, began backing away from the ridge. Some turned and walked quickly back toward camp. Others stood frozen, faces pale. They were afraid. No, they were terrified. "This day I defy the armies of Israel," Goliath roared. "Give me a man and let us fight each other." And no one answered. No one stepped forward. The army of the living God stood silent before an uncircumcised Philistine. David felt something rise in his chest. Not fear, anger. Righteous, burning anger. David grabbed the arm of a soldier near him. "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" he demanded. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The soldier looked at David like he was insane. "You just arrived, didn't you? That's Goliath of Gath. He's been challenging us for 40 days, twice a day. No one dares fight him." "But what's the reward?" David pressed. "Surely the king offers something." "Oh, the reward is incredible," another soldier jumped in. "Great wealth, the king's daughter in marriage, your entire family exempt from taxes forever." "And no one has accepted?" David's voice rose in disbelief. "Did you see that giant? Did you hear his voice? He's over 9 feet tall, and his armor alone weighs more than you do." But David wasn't listening anymore. He was staring across the valley at Goliath, who was now walking back to the Philistine camp, laughing. That was challenge number 79. And once again, Israel had cowered. David moved through the crowd, asking the same questions, getting the same answers. Yes, the reward was real. No, no one had volunteered. Yes, everyone was afraid. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?" David kept saying. "The armies of the living God should not be mocked like this." Word began to spread through the camp. "There's a young man asking about the giant. Says something about an uncircumcised Philistine defying God. Sounds angry. Actually angry, not afraid. Someone should tell the king." David finally found his brother's unit. He spotted Eliab, his oldest brother, and hurried toward him. "Eliab." Eliab turned, and his face immediately darkened when he saw David. "What are you doing here?" Eliab snapped. "And who did you leave those few sheep with in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." The accusation stung. David had walked 15 miles to bring them food, to check on their welfare, and this was his greeting. "Now what have I done?" David protested. "Can't I even speak?" But Eliab had already turned away, dismissing him. David stood there, hurt but undeterred. His brother didn't understand. None of them understood. This wasn't about watching a battle. This wasn't about some boyish desire for adventure. This was about the honor of God. Israel was God's chosen people. Their army fought in his name. And some pagan giant was mocking the living God twice a day, and no one was doing anything about it. It was intolerable. David turned to other soldiers and continued asking his questions. "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?" Why does no one answer his challenge? And finally, someone reported to King Saul, "Your Majesty, there's a young man in the camp. He's been asking about fighting the Philistine. Says something about removing the disgrace from Israel." Saul, who'd been sitting in his tent in despair, looked up sharply. "A young man? Who? I don't know his name, but he seems serious, not mocking. Actually serious." For the first time in 40 days, something like hope flickered in Saul's chest. "Bring him to me," Saul commanded. Immediately, they brought David to Saul's tent. The guards announced him, "David, son of Jesse from Bethlehem." Saul looked up, and recognition flashed across his face. David? The harp player? Because Saul knew David. This was the young shepherd who'd been brought to play music for him when the dark moods came. The boy whose music brought peace. But Saul had sent him home weeks ago. What was he doing here? David stood before the king and spoke with a confidence that seemed to come from somewhere beyond himself. "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." The tent went silent. Saul stared at David. The boy couldn't be more than 17. Lean, sun-browned from outdoor work, still smelling faintly of sheep. "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him," Saul said finally. "You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David didn't back down. "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep," David said, his voice steady. "When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it." Saul's commanders leaned forward, listening now. "A lion? A bear? Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear," David continued. "This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God." And then David said the words that would echo through history. "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." The tent was silent. Saul looked at this shepherd boy, this unlikely champion, and saw something he hadn't seen in his army for 40 days. Faith. Pure, unshakable faith. Not confidence in weapons or strategy or human strength, but confidence in God. Saul felt something twist in his chest. Once, long ago, he'd had that kind of faith too, before he'd disobeyed. Before Samuel had told him God had rejected him, before the Spirit had departed. Now here was this boy, radiating the very thing Saul had lost. "Go," Saul said quietly, "and the Lord be with you." Then Saul did something that revealed both his good intentions and his fundamental misunderstanding of what was about to happen. "Bring my armor," Saul commanded his servants. They brought the king's personal armor, a bronze helmet, a coat of mail, a sword. They placed the helmet on David's head. It immediately slipped down over his eyes, too large. They strapped the coat of mail onto his shoulders. The weight nearly buckled David's knees. He wasn't used to armor. They fastened the sword around his waist. It dragged on the ground. David took a step and nearly fell. He tried another step. The armor clanked and shifted. He couldn't move properly, couldn't see clearly, couldn't breathe well. This was impossible. "I cannot go in these," David said, struggling to remove the helmet. "I am not used to them." He took off the armor piece by piece and handed it back to Saul's servants. There was disappointment in the tent. If he wouldn't wear armor, how could he possibly survive? But David knew something they didn't. The armor wasn't what would protect him. God was. "I'll go as I am," David said simply. He picked up his shepherd's staff, the same staff he'd carried for years, and he walked out of the king's tent, past the staring soldiers, heading toward the valley. He had one stop to make first. David made his way down the slope toward the valley floor. There was a small brook that ran through the valley, a seasonal stream with water flowing over smooth stones. David knelt beside it. The sound of running water was peaceful, almost jarring against the tension of the moment. David reached into the cold water and began feeling the stones, testing them in his hand. Too rough, too light, too irregular. He was looking for specific stones, perfectly smooth, perfectly round, perfectly weighted, the kind of stones he'd used 1,000 times with his sling. He found the first one. Perfect. He placed it in his shepherd's bag. The second, smooth as glass, into the bag. The third, fourth, fifth, 5 stones total. Why 5? Goliath had 4 brothers, also giants, serving in the Philistine army, though not here today. And David was prepared for all of them if necessary. But he had faith that 1 stone would be enough. 1 stone, 1 sling, 1 God. David stood, his bag now carrying the 5 smooth stones, his staff in his hand, his sling tucked into his belt. He looked like exactly what he was, a shepherd boy. No armor, no sword, no spear, just faith. Across the valley, the Philistine camp was stirring. Word had spread quickly. Someone was actually coming to fight Goliath. The giant was being summoned. David took a deep breath and started walking across the valley floor toward the Philistine side. Behind him, on the Israeli ridge, soldiers were gathering to watch. Is that a boy? What is he carrying? A stick? Where's his armor? He's going to die. But one soldier, watching David walk with steady purpose across the valley, and whispered, or maybe God is with him. In the Philistine camp, Goliath was preparing for what he assumed would be another pointless morning display. "Someone's coming to fight you," his armor-bearer reported. Goliath laughed. "Finally. Who is it? One of their champions? That tall king of theirs?" "No, my lord. It appears to be a boy." Goliath stopped. "A boy?" "Yes, my lord. Young, no armor, carrying a staff." Goliath's face darkened, but not with fear, with rage. A boy? They were sending him a boy? This was beyond insult. This was mockery. "Get my armor," Goliath growled. His armor-bearer helped him into the bronze coat of mail, fastened the helmet, handed him his massive spear. Goliath stormed out of his tent and began walking toward the valley, his armor-bearer jogging ahead with the huge shield. Other Philistine soldiers gathered to watch, many of them laughing. "They're sending a child. Is this their champion? Goliath will kill him in seconds." But one older Philistine warrior, a veteran who'd fought in many battles, watched the approaching boy with narrowed eyes. "That's a shepherd's sling," he observed quietly. "And look at how he walks. No fear. That boy's killed before." "Killed what? Sheep?" another Philistine mocked. "Maybe, or maybe other things." But no one was really worried. Goliath was invincible. Everyone knew that. Goliath reached his position in the valley and turned to face the approaching figure. The boy was getting closer now. Still 100 yards away, but close enough for Goliath to see his face. Young, beardless, handsome actually. Ruddy-cheeked, the kind of boy who'd never seen real battle. Goliath felt his contempt grow. This wasn't even a fight. This was going to be an execution. And when he killed this boy in front of both armies, Israel's morale would finally break. They'd surrender. The war would be over. Goliath planted his spear in the ground and waited. Let the boy come closer. Let both armies see what happens to those who dare challenge Goliath of Gath. The moment was arriving. On the Israeli ridge, every soldier who could get a view was watching. Even Saul stood at the edge of his tent, unable to look away. Eliab watched his youngest brother walking toward the giant, and despite his earlier anger, fear clenched his heart. "What have you done, David?" he whispered. On the Philistine ridge, warriors gathered to witness what they assumed would be their champion's easiest victory yet. In the valley, David continued walking steadily forward. 70 yards from Goliath. 60, 50. Goliath watched him come, contempt radiating from every line of his massive body. And somewhere beyond the valley, beyond the hills, beyond human sight, the armies of heaven watched a shepherd boy walk toward a giant. This was the moment. 40 days of fear were about to end. Not through military might, not through superior strategy, but through faith. Simple, pure, unshakable faith. The kind of faith that moves mountains or kills giants. David took another step. Goliath gripped his spear. Both armies held their breath. 12 hours remain until dawn, and the confrontation is set for tomorrow morning. But tonight, both camps will prepare. One side will prepare for victory. The other will prepare for a miracle.